welcome to Tuesday, October 8th meeting of the Renewal Board of Education. Sorry, I'll turn my mic on. This meeting is now called to order. Mrs. Fox, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Here.
Ms. Heindrich?
Here.
Dr. Blogg?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Dr. Turner?
Present.
Terry Wing?
I am here.
And Mabel Fox? Myself, yes.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move to recognitions.
All right, thank you, President Weems. This month, we are excited to celebrate October as National Principals Month. So we do have some principals here. You guys want to stand up? Just, you don't have to talk, like I told you. You just can say hi. So this is a representative sample across our district. Many I know are watching online, so they are also excited to be celebrated for National Principals Month. I wanted to just take a moment to share an ode to principals. In the heart of our schools, you will stand so tall, a guiding light in each and every hall. With tireless steps, you walk the miles, lifting spirits and encouraging smiles. Through early dawn and late twilight, you carry the weight, yet keep things bright. For every child, every need, every voice, you help us believe. You offer a choice. You see the unseen, you hear the unheard. With every action, you honor your word. Building bridges between school and home, no student or family ever feels alone. Your dedication knows no rest. In every challenge, you give your best. With the wisdom, grace, and open heart, you make our schools a work of art. And still, you grow, you learn, you lead, nurturing both minds and hearts that need. To every principal, we lift this praise for your commitment and countless days. October's breeze whispers your name, and our success, you stake your claim. Thank you for the difference you make, for every step and stand you take. Our principals work hard each and every day, and their work often goes unnoticed. But these amazing leaders here at Farmington Public School play such a huge role in the success of our teachers, our staff, and our students. Wanted to just send a huge thank you to all of our incredible principals and assistant principals who lead with dedication and inspire our students every day. Your impact is invaluable. Thank you. I told them they would have like a little token. I promise, it's not a book. I always give them books. But I gave them a book last week, so we're good. We're good. But this little plaque, in partnership, the Education Foundation purchased these for you. It says, a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are for. So you will be getting these this week. And again, thank you so much to all of our principals, both in the room and watching online.
Thank you. And now we will move to approval of the agenda. Mr. Walker.
I move that the Board of Education approve the October 8th, 2024 regular meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Walker and seconded by Dr. Turner to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The agenda is now approved, and we will move on to announcements. Again, October is Principals Month, and the Board of Education also wishes to thank our principals. We have great staff, many of whom have been recognized internally and externally as nationally distinguished principals by the National Association of Elementary School Principals. or by the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals and Michigan Association of Student Councils and Honor Societies and our PTAs and our county PTAs. So we again thank you. On behalf of the Board of Education, we also have a small token of appreciation as well. We'd like to buy each of you, principals and assistant principals, a cup of coffee. You will get your Starbucks gift certificate sometime before the end of October. We thank you again for your service. Next, I hope everyone is enjoying the fall. I'm glad the weather is holding up personally. It's also the season for homecomings and for spirit weeks and for all of those good things. It's also the season for students to apply to colleges. Parents, please be advised that the deadline for early decision applications is November 1st. Please take note of that. November 5th, voters will be asked to renew several operating millages, and we have folks here who will be speaking about that today. FAPN will be hosting a school board candidate forum on October 30th at the Farmington Community Library on 12 Mile. The PTA Council hosted a virtual forum on Monday, yesterday, October 7th, and that recording can be found on the PTA Council page of the district's website, if anyone is interested. I want to congratulate the staff who supported our young ladies attending the PBG, Pretty Brown Girls Inaugural Dream Summit on September 27th. I received a video of the event and I saw young ladies who represented themselves well and the district well as well. This is also the season for parent-teacher conferences. Please sign up for those, don't forget. And tell your teachers and your staff members, thank you. We will be kind this fall. At our last meeting, I mentioned that Trustee Smith was nominated for an award. She was nominated by Kelly Goldberg. There were 9 nominees in total, well, this past weekend at the Detroit Institute of Arts. She and hundreds of guests celebrated many leaders in the area. The event has grown with attendance hitting more than 500 in recent years. She was selected as the winner of the African American Leadership Award for Leadership in Education. So I want to congratulate her. We are all, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead, Ms.
So I am honored. I bought this only because Diane asked me to. But I'm honored to say that I received this. I had no idea. I was shocked. Everybody knows I'm never without words, but I was. I want to thank, and nothing taken away from any of my other colleagues, but I've had some great mentors. Oh, Lord, no, you didn't put that up there. Oh, my goodness. Well, anyway, I want to thank Dr. David Turner and Terry Weems for, once I got elected on this board, what many people don't know is my father was dying when I got elected. David Turner was always on the phone. You all right? You good? You need anything? Terry called me every week to make sure I knew how to do my board packet and everything. And that has made me a part of being able to do the work that I do for this district. Nothing taken away from any other of my colleagues. Mr. Walker is always trying to keep me in check and make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Dr. Coffin, I want to thank you for all of your support in these past couple of months. But I think I didn't get this for myself. This is for this community. This is not my award. This is Farmington's award. Now, y'all don't get to keep it. But it's yours. This is for you, this community. And I want to thank those that have helped me along the way. So thank you so much for everything and the friendship and keeping me in check every now and then, Mr. Walker, okay? Well, I got Mr. Turner here too, so thank you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. And we're just going to keep your picture up there because I know you don't like it.
Mr. Walker, that's where you come in to help me.
I'm staying over here.
Next, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Blau and Vice President Walker and the former Superintendent Delgado for being featured in the latest MASB Leadership Magazine. I was proud that we were one of very few districts who created a board committee dedicated to outreach and engagement, and I believe that that was actually you, Mr. Walker, who created that committee several years ago. Last week, Dr. Blau, Mrs. Heinrich, and I attended one of these community forums, and I was really blown away. I'm not going to take away Dr. Blau's report, but most of the families who visited that session were not originally from this district, much like myself, moved here after having children, and they had the most incredible stories about how their students and their families were noticed, felt that they belonged. An incredible diverse group of people who had nothing but great things to say. So congratulations for pulling folks in and having those conversations. The point, again, was to have a collaborative discussion because these board meetings are not that platform. This is not the place to have a two-way dialogue. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for getting us featured in that magazine. I also want to thank our treasurer, Mrs. Claudia Heinrich, in advance for representing us at the next MASB conference on a panel discussion regarding school policies on cell phone policies or cell phone usage. I'm really looking forward to that. Last week, I attended a safety and security training issued by MASB. They talked a lot about things we are already doing, so I was really happy to hear about that. Things like using the same terminology across our buildings. I saw recently that the district is converting to some state norms there, which is good, so that when subs come in or law enforcement come in, everybody knows what we're doing and we're using all of the same terms. There was some discussion about board member roles, and I'm also really pleased about how we're weaving in those safety discussions in our regular meetings. They don't have to be a separate presentation, but in a lot of what we're doing and what we'll be talking about today, we'll be having those conversations about how they relate to safety and security. Last week, I also got to attend Lanigan's Literacy Day. It was a wonderful representation and demonstration of family engagement. The junior optimists were there, the library and scouts were there, Mrs. Smith also attended. There were fun games, and I overheard a lot of buzz. I mean, I saw kids running around talking about, where are we going next? It was so incredibly wonderful to see. Parents and adults, whoever they were also extremely engaged. I heard them talking as they were leaving the parking lot about what a fun event that was and what they wanted to do next. So kudos to the staff at Lanigan and the principal, Tanya Corbett. October is National Bullying Prevention Month. This month is a time to raise awareness of bullying and promote kindness, inclusivity, and acceptance. As a school community, we want to encourage everyone to stay informed about the signs of bullying, the impact it can have, and what to do if and when you see it happening. That ends my announcements. We will now move into public comment. There are public comment cards at the back of the room. Thank you very much. As a reminder, we have now, through the end of this year, 2 opportunities for public comment. Because we want to continue to hear from the community as obviously as we're handling some very important things over the next few months. During public comment, members have an opportunity to speak. A timer will be on the screen. You have 3 minutes. If your comment is related to a student or staff member, we ask that you use caution in stating names of individuals where protection of privacy would be more appropriate. The board will respectfully listen. Generally, we do not respond unless there are matters of fact to correct. In some cases, it might be appropriate for someone to follow up with you to address your concerns. The first person I have is Mr. Bill Lovaway, followed by Thomas Hull. Those are the only 2 comments that I have at this time. If you want to make public comment, please fill out a card. Welcome, Mr. Lovaway. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, or is it good evening?
Good evening.
Vote no on the Farmington District Operating Village Renewal Proposal. 4 years ago, this school board proclaimed that we taxpayers are racist, segregationists who discriminate against many racist groups. The proclamation resided on the Farmington website for 4 years until it disappeared a couple of months ago when the tax renewal surfaced. Did the proclamation jeopardize the upcoming tax vote by us oppressors? The confusing ballot language proposes to increase the 10-year tax limit to 21 mills from 18 mills, I think. For 2026, the homestead tax levy would remain at 5.2 mills, but it could be increased to 12.6 mills without a vote by taxpayers. For 2026, the non-homestead tax levy could remain at 18 mills, but it could be increased to 21 mills without a vote by taxpayers. Nowhere are the conditions for such increases explained. Nowhere are the effects on household finances considered, especially in the face of the last 4 years of inflation totaling 25+%. Finally, the district is planning to refund bonds. Will bond principal increase to cover additional capital expenditures? Will bond principal and interest increase? Most importantly, will taxes increase?
Thank you, Mr. Lubway. This is one area of fact I would like to correct. And respectfully, this board has never called anyone in our community racist. Let me just be clear to our public, that is not true, that is false. We have acknowledged racial issues in our community that are not uncommon across the entire United States, if that's what you're referring to. No one on this board and this entire board collectively has ever called anyone in our community racist. So I just want to be very, very clear there. I'm also very happy that we will have a presentation to provide facts on the operating millage, which is not an increase in taxes at all. So I want to be very clear on that. Mr. Hall, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to announce that VIII is doing their Super Saturday kickoff, October 12th, this Saturday. Yoo-hoo! With a pancake breakfast that's actually chef-prepared. So the AKs, which our partner, we got it together with a fresh chef that's going to be making pancakes outside and bringing them into the school and have them for good Saturday kickoff. We're going to have tutoring. We're going to have also a person for like early registration for college that you alluded to earlier. And we're going to we need volunteers still for the year and want to make sure everybody is aware of it. I did have a flyer go out on Peach Jar and also through the district website so everybody can register and everything like that. So we're looking for a great new year of our exciting tutoring that we have every single year. That's it for me.
Thank you. At this time, I see no further public comment. There is another public comment period, so we will ask one more time if there is any public comment. Seeing none, we will close public comment for this first session. And we will now move on to items from the Secretary. Mrs. Fox?
Yes, item from the Secretary. The board has received communication regarding you're invited. Thank you, everyone, for the IB 5-year evaluation. It's a wrap. And the IB News and Views newsletter, October edition. The board acknowledges communication and responds with appropriate. A list of respondents can be found in the board packet, accessible in the Farmington Public School website.
Thank you. And now moving on to a legislative update. Dr. Blau?
Yes. A couple of things. The Senate and House passed Bill 5803, which provides a rate reduction for MIPSERS, which is the Michigan Public School Employees Retirement System. And that will, let me just see here. It was signed into law last Thursday, and MASB's, Michigan Association of School Board Executive Director Don Rotruba stated, quote, "This law is a positive change for schools and educators. By lowering MIPSERS costs, districts will be able to prioritize funding that directly impacts student learning." So that's a good thing. Also, there is some legislation that the legislature passed, but still waiting for the governor's signature, a school aid supplemental bill to restore funding to the school safety and mental health grants. This puts the grants at $150 million for the fiscal year 2024-25. So that's also very good. There is a dyslexia screening bill that also passed both houses, still awaiting the governor's signature, but that for us as a school district is a bit more controversial. It's not that we don't agree with the importance of early screening and identification of dyslexia, but the way that the bill is written is somewhat problematic. I don't know if Dr. Coffin, if you wanted to add anything to that about that particular bill?
I agree with what you shared. We do have tools already in place here to screen for dyslexia, so we'll see where it lands.
Right. There is a government relations council meeting tomorrow out at Oakland Schools, which I'll be attending, so I'll bring back more information at our next board meeting.
Thank you. I'm pretty pleased about that MIPSERS change. I think that's moving from about 7-8% to 5%, which should free up some considerable dollars. Is this something that will be fed into next year's budget, or is that when would that become effective?
We'll be counting on it for next year's budget.
Okay, that's great. Perfect. All right, excellent. Seeing nothing further there, we will move to district updates. Dr. Coffin?
Yes, again, thank you, President Weems. As we've mentioned, thanks again to our principals and assistant principals for all you do each and every day. I had the chance to attend the Friends and Family FPS marching band showcase last night at Farmington High School field. It was the first time that both Farmington and North Farmington bands performed together and performed their halftime performance with an audience of both parents and friends of the Farmington and Farmington Hills bands. Shout out to the band directors and the assistant directors for bringing the community together through music. It was really an amazing time. This Friday, I am honored to be able to join our Gill students in Frankenmuth, Michigan, as they are recognized by the organization Keep Michigan Beautiful for their kindness project. This kindness project took place as part of our authentic learning with Dr. McConaughey in urban learning in Miss Kate Harris's class. This project, again, for those who attended the showcase at the end of last year, you probably will remember the group of students who at one point took over the entire presentation as we were getting the certificates ready, but they shared their project with their audience. So I'll be traveling with them as they receive their award. Many of the classmates, if they're staying back, so it'll be on Zoom. So there'll be a few of us in Frankenmuth. The rest of the class will celebrate here in Farmington. So wonderful. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you. We will now move to reviews of each of the renewals, starting with Farmington Hills Road millage, and then the operating millage for Farmington Public Schools, followed by the library millage renewal. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Would you help make sure he's on the right presentation? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Saksuski. I'm with the City of Farmington Hills Department of Public Services. So I'm here this evening to provide some information on the road millage renewal that will be on the ballot this November. So I understand I have a much smaller window of time than I thought, so I'll try to move through this rather quickly. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I have some brochures on the table and back. You can email me or anybody on our staff to get those questions answered. So with that, let's get going. So the city of Farmington Hills is a large community. We're not quite 34 square miles in area. We have about 380 miles of public roads within the city limits. 300 of those fall on the shoulders of the city of Farmington Hills to maintain, reconstruct, take care of. The other two big players in our jurisdiction are the Road Commission for Oakland County. They have about 30 miles, and the state of Michigan. So with respect to city-owned roads, like I said, we're responsible for about 300 miles in total, and that breaks down to about 59 miles of major thoroughfares, which includes 8 or 9 miles of industrial roads. It includes about 240 miles of local roads, and that includes about 19 miles that are still gravel. This is just simply a road jurisdiction map that kind of summarizes what I was just talking about. You can see in the orange, Road Commission for Oakland County jurisdiction, the purple, MDOT, and all the rest, City of Farmington Hills, 300 miles. So you can see how extensive our network is. So lots of people ask where their tax dollars go and why they don't make it to the roads. So this slide just simply shows that the county captures about 16.75% of our property taxes, education about 45%, and the city captures that 38% that remains, but that's required to operate parks and rec, police, fire, really any city operations, and there's not a whole lot left for roads at the end of the day typically. So the city's current road funding is from a few different sources. To start off with, we have the state road revenue or Act 51 funds. These are passed to the city through fuel taxes and vehicle registration fees. So these funds can pay for normal operations like snow plowing and salting, patching, crack sealing, road grading, forestry, landscaping, signs and pavement markings, and maintenance and operation of traffic signals. So it's not really like reconstruction projects or rehab projects. It's everyday, keep the network working type operational funds. Then there's many federal and state grants. So we're very, very good at collecting money from the state and federal programs that are offered to us. These are awarded on a project-by-project basis. The funding fluctuates quite a bit year to year, and not every project in need qualifies, so it's a challenge. Now, we're good at it, and I think last year you might have saw we had 14-mile road between Drake and Farmington under construction. That was a federal project. We had Farmington Road 12 to 13 under construction last year. And then coming up, we have Halstead 12 to 14, Farmington Road 13 to 14, Farmington Road 10 to 12. We received some federal funding for all those projects coming up. Then the 2014 road millage is another pot of money we use, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. That's on the ballot for renewal. And that really concentrates on major mile road reconstruction, additional preventative maintenance and reconstruction on the city's major road network, improved preventative maintenance on the local road network, and possibly some additional resources for local road construction projects and rehabs. And then lastly, we have the 2018 millage, and that was actually a charter amendment that removed the special assessment process, and we used the road millage to fund local rehabilitation projects. And that was important because we found that it was very difficult to go into a neighborhood and expect the residents to pay $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 for their share of a road reconstruction project. So that millage has really met with approval by a lot of residents. So here's a map. You can see what we've been doing since 2014. Everything in dark blue has been touched in that time. So you can see a lot of major road construction, a lot of local roads all throughout the city.
Oh, yeah, we know. Sorry.
And you might ask, well, how do we decide what roads to fix? What treatments to use? So that starts with our pavement management process, and we evaluate the existing condition of our entire network, and we generate what we call a PACER score for each road segment. PACER stands for Pavement Surface Evaluation and Rating. It's really just a standardized process to make an assessment of the pavement distress. So 10 is a new pavement, 1 is a pavement that's completely failed. So you can see we have about 180 miles of asphalt, 100 miles of concrete, about 19 miles of gravel. And there's a breakdown of our good, fair, poor condition on this chart. I like this next chart much better. So this bar graph of the major road network, it really tells the story beyond PACER scores. So you can see in 2014, the average score was about a 5 on the top of the column there. In 2023, we moved that all the way to a 7. So in 2014, nearly half of our network was in poor condition. So you flash forward to today, and 90% of our network on the major roads is in good or fair condition. Significant improvement. The local road network is much larger, and in the past, the special assessment process was the only mechanism used for road repair. So we didn't really keep up with the needs of the network. Now, this doesn't look as rosy as the major road slide we just had up, but the PACER scores increased from less than 4 to almost 5 in 2023. And once again, if you look at the bar graphs, 65% of the roads were in poor condition in 2014. We've reduced that to about 40% today. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're making good progress. This is simply a map of all the PACER scores. Citywide, I like the next map better because it shows everything that's in poor condition and everything we need to still take care of. So there's our next steps. And these two maps show 2014 versus 2023. So you can see in 2014, the major road network was all poor or fair. It's all red or orange. You look at 2023, hardly a poor road on it. And since this map has come out, we've redone 11 mile from Farmington to Orchard. We have money budgeted for Farmington 13 to 14. And some of that industrial park work has been programmed or underway. So we're really making good improvements from that standpoint also. We just wanted to draw attention to inflation and where things are. In 2014, $500,000 a lane mile for asphalt, $900,000 a lane mile for concrete, and they've almost tripled in 2023. So our dollar's not going as far as it used to for a lot of different reasons. So we're proposing renewal of the 2014 millage. It's 2 mills. It'll generate about $9 million annually. This will allow continued investment in our public roads in Farmington Hills, and it really maintains the progress toward improved road conditions that we've seen so far. So the average 2 mil rate on a home in Farmington Hills is about $240 annually. So the mills have stayed the same. Property values went up a little bit, so that's where the extra $20 came from our last presentation. So our goals and expectations are sustained road funding, ensuring continued progress, improve safety for pedestrians and motorists, reduce wear and tear on vehicles. We want to keep our city a desirable location to live, work, and do business. Enhanced asset management, that means cost-effective treatments, something we've been very good at as of late. Improve property curb appeal, and we'd like to stabilize and continue to improve our property values. So this is our proposed ballot language. I know we're on a strict timeline, so we won't read it, but that's included in the pamphlet in the back if you'd like to take a close look at it. And with that, I'd entertain any questions or...
Thank you so much for that presentation. Any questions from board members? I think most of us probably looked at our own section and area to find out what was going to... Go ahead, Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah.
I just have a question. Do sidewalks come out of the road fund, or is that a different fund?
That's a separate fund.
Separate fund, okay.
Do you have a particular sidewalk that you're looking to have installed?
No, I just, they're putting some in near my neighborhood and stuff, and I was just wondering if that was part of the road thing.
Is that at Freedom and Folsom by Power?
Yeah.
So that was a federal safety program grant that we received. And it was based on the fact there were no good crossings by the the pedestrian overpass over M5.
Okay.
And the shoulder was terrible to try to get through with a wheelchair, or if you were handicapped especially, not to mention a bicycle. So we secured some funds, and we're putting in a signalized crossing there with rapid flashing beacons and connecting some sidewalk. And we may go further down Freedom and Folsom in the future years to go all the way to Orchard Lake.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? No? Seeing none? Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. We're going to switch the order a bit and have the library come in next, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening.
Let's see. Uh-oh. Okay, he's switching them. All right. Well, while he's doing that, thank you, Board of Education and President Weems, for the opportunity to give you a brief update on library operations and give the public some information about the library operating millage renewal. All right, so there you have your Board of Trustees. For those in the public who may or may not know, how does somebody arrive on the Board of Trustees of the library? We have 4 appointees from the city of Farmington, 4 from the city of Farmington Hills. We currently do have 1 vacancy in the city of Farmington, so if you're interested, reach out to the city manager's office over there and let them know if you're interested in service on the board. Any of these folks also would be good resources if you have questions about the millage campaign. When you take a look at our revenues, the majority of our revenues do come through property tax collections, the millage. We have a summer millage and we have a winter millage. The millage that's up for renewal is the summer millage. Beyond the property tax revenues, we receive revenues from intergovernmental sources, state and penal aid fund taxes, memorials and gifts. Some people choose to leave the library in their will, and we appreciate that. We also do have some revenues from fees. Farmington Community Library is a fee-free library, but we do encounter situations where people might damage equipment or they just do not return. So we do still collect fees there. And then we have other revenue sources that might include grant funding for some of the programs that we have going on. Speaking to the revenues, I will say we've benefited over the last few years from the increased interest rate environment that we've been experiencing and increased property values. So that's why you kind of see a steady increase in revenues there. When we look at expenditures, salaries and benefits are our #1 expenditure because our people are the resource that we use to deliver and connect our resources to the community. What I want to point out, though, is that our salary expenses are lower than they were in 2019. So our director, who's here tonight, Kelly Segrist, and the staff and the board have been very judicious about having the right positions in place and doing as much as we can with the resources we have. Beyond that, we do spend quite a bit on our buildings and facilities. The buildings are 40, 50 years old. But those revenues that we've been able to capture allow us to fund most of the projects that we need through our general fund. So over the past few years, some of the projects that we've done include new air conditioning, chillers, new entry doors at the Farmington location. We've installed new Wi-Fi networking in both of our buildings. We have replaced the carpet, paint, and all the general upkeep as needed. We've also installed a new automated material handling system, and we've got new pickup lockers coming in the next few weeks that'll allow people to access the library 24/7 through the lockers. Next year, we plan to replace the roofing at both buildings through our general fund revenues. So I'll stop there in the interest of time. I do want to thank you guys for your support. I direct anybody to take a look at our website. We've got lots of information there about the millage renewal and what our funds go to support. The main thing I want to point out is that this is a renewal of the summer operating millage. It consists of 55% of our operating budget. So if it doesn't pass, the Library Board of Trustees will have to make choices about services. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you for this presentation. I think the key point here is that this is a renewal. This
Yes.
is not an increase. And thank you for sharing that this is 55% of the library's budget. We appreciate that information.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And
Thank you.
appreciate your service and everything that the school board is doing as well.
But obviously, the school is very appreciative of the library. Thank you. Next, we will have the Farmington Public Schools renewal. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good evening. So this is our presentation we've been sharing at various PTA meetings. We will be going to the council at the city of Farmington, as well as Farmington Hills, and any group that we can share this information with to make sure everybody understands our operating millage renewal. So again, this is a renewal of our existing millage that is in place. So this will not be an increase. So just to provide a little bit of history, 30 years ago, Proposal A was passed, and Proposal A did two main things. It reduced property taxes significantly for all taxpayers within the state, and it created a foundation allowance which allowed districts throughout the state to be funded more equitably. So Farmington at that time was highly supported by its taxpayers. We levied over 33 mills. And so we were already spending at a certain level in that foundation allowance, the minimum that was set by the state. We were already spending above that. And so certain districts, including Farmington, were allowed to go to taxpayers and ask to levy an operating millage on residential taxpayers. And that's your homestead operating millage. So the property taxes are one piece of that foundation allowance that we talk about, and that's our main source of funding. So in the current year, we're receiving $11,484. So you can see the left side, that's that homestead or hold harmless operating millage that we levy on our residential taxpayers. We can only collect $1,876 per pupil. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that millage is calculated shortly. The other piece of property taxes that we collect is from non-homestead, and that's that green piece. That's the 18 mills that we levy on our businesses. So those two pieces make up about $5,200. And so that's what we collect locally as part of our foundation allowance. The remainder of $6,200 then comes from the state. So just to talk a little bit about how those millages are calculated or set each year. So as our ballot language asks for, we're asking for an authorization of 21 mills for non-homestead. We can only levy 18 mills each year, no more than that. So the reason we're asking for that additional 3 mills is if the Headley amendment kicks in and reduces our authorization. The state assumes we will collect 18 mills as part of our foundation allowance each year. When we don't collect that, it's lost revenue for us. On the flip side, our homestead millage rate, again, that's an annual calculation that we have to do. So as mentioned earlier, we have authorization for about 12 and a half mills right now. We have never levied anything up to that amount in the past. But the way the millage rate is calculated each year is $1,876 per pupil that we can collect times our estimated enrollment equals that total property taxes to collect. We then take that total amount and we divide it by our taxable value for our homestead properties, and that determines that millage rate. So last year, we levied about 5.5 mills. We all know taxable values have been going up over the last few years, In the current year, we're levying 5.2 mils. So the intent of this language or this calculation is to keep those property taxes fairly even from year to year. And this is a calculation that is reviewed by the Michigan Department of Treasury each year. So just some key elements about what we use our operating millage for. Again, about 27% of those property taxes cover our daily operational expenses, obviously staff, costs and benefits, as well as materials for all of our programs. It is different from the recent bond that we passed in 2020 in that the bond pays for infrastructure, buses, and technology. So again, without this millage in place, the district will lose more than $49 million annually, and the state would not make up that shortfall. They expect us to collect those property taxes locally. So our current millage expires in December of 2025. We are asking for a 10-year renewal, as we've had this past time. And we are holding it this November now, even though it expires next year, just to give us additional time. If, say, it weren't to pass, we'd have a few more dates to be able to go back to the taxpayers and ask for that renewal. Just some important dates. Obviously, November 5th is Election Day. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can get an absentee ballot at the city clerk's office. Just make sure you register by Monday, October 21st to be able to vote in that upcoming election. And we do have more information on our website. We do have a flyer that has some of this basic information on it, and we also have a frequently asked questions document that has more detailed information. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, can you go back to that slide with the calculation on it? Just because there's some misinformation out in the community, and so I think it's really important. As far as the annual calculation, that $1,876, that's set by the state, we don't set it?
That has, correct, that amount does not change each year.
Doesn't change each year.
Correct.
And so the Board of Education, even though we're authorizing 21 mills, Board of Education doesn't decide on how many mills to collect. The number of mills to collect is calculated by that formula. So
Correct.
as property values go up, then the millage rate goes down because it's divided by the taxable value. So the millage rate fluctuates every year. It's not set every year. You have to recalculate it every year.
That's
based
correct.
on the property values.
Yes.
Just so that the public understands that information, just because it's easy to just take one piece out of context and, not really understand how it's being done. And
Right.
it's a significant piece of our funding.
Correct.
And it also depends on per pupil. So if our enrollment drops, we can't
We don't
raise
collect
the
as much.
millage rate, just because the amount we're allowed to collect is based on our student population. And so we can't just say, oh, well, our student population dropped, and so let's just collect a higher millage rate. So the Board of Education can't do any of that stuff.
That's correct. It's a calculation. So there were, back in 2008, 2009, when housing values tanked, taxable values tanked, our millage rate did creep up slightly. That's because taxable values dropped so significantly. So now in this environment, though, where taxable values are rising, that millage rate is going down each year. And again, we hold that truth in budgeting hearing. We have our public budget hearing where we talk about the upcoming year's budget as well as setting those tax levies or those millage rates each year. So that is done annually as well.
And so when the taxable values drop, we just raise the millage rate to maintain the level of funding.
That's correct.
And we're not really raising the taxes that the homeowners are paying. We're just
Correct.
keeping it at the level that they were paying, and it's just calculated that
That's
way.
correct.
So that's important information.
Yeah, the homestead operating millage is intended to be fairly flat for taxpayers. It may shift up slightly or down each year, but the intent is to keep that level, and that's by collecting that same amount per pupil. If our enrollment remains stable, obviously, we're collecting approximately the same amount of property taxes, but as taxable values rise, then that millage rate would go down. So we're only collecting the amount we're able to. Yes.
I'm just wondering, how do we, for our folks in our neighborhoods and what have you, how do we get that information on to the citizens of Farmington Hills?
So I know we did put information in the update that just went to families. I believe it was in early September. Again, a lot of this information's on our website. We're trying to get out to various groups. I know I think the homeowners association will visit with them. So we'll go to as many groups and in meetings as we can to communicate this information. And if anyone has questions in the community, I'm happy to take emails, phone calls to help explain things as to how they, impact the homeowner or taxpayer.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I think key takeaways for our community ought to be this is a renewal. This millage currently represents $49 million of our budget, which I think is about 30%. And I think that's very useful information to understand the facts and that this is not an increase.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We will now move on to our next agenda item, which are reports from board committees. And we'll start with Mr. Walker for the Policy Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Policy and Board Governance Committee met on the 26th of September. Myself, President Weems, Secretary Fox were in attendance along with Dr. Coffin and our Executive Assistant, Ramona Mayberry. We were going over the remainder of the Miller-Johnson updates. Our purpose in reading these minutes and this information tonight specifically is to give you our recommendations from the committee. And if there are no major discussions or concerns about the recommendations, then we'll ask that these recommendations be brought forth at our next meeting as action items for approval. Okay. So our recommendations for the remaining policies are as follows, and I just also want to briefly remind the board that a portion of these updates that were provided by Miller and Johnson back in June were taken care of then because those updates were very timely and we needed to address them at that time. Excuse me. So, and I'll do this as quickly as I possibly can, but still leaving room for conversation if needed. The first policy that was up for recommendation is policy 17.01 under the adoption of amendment of bylaws and policies. It is their recommendation or their rationale for this change is that over time, the clients have requested that the superintendent they're offering that the superintendent have a little bit more authority in making minor clerical revisions to board policy. And that was the key, board policy without taking such items through the formal approval process. And so our recommendation as it relates to update 17.01 is that we leave our current policy intact and we do not accept their recommendation. Our current policy is that the board will adopt or amend the bylaws and policies after readings at 2 separate board meetings. Board may, by a majority vote of members elected serving, waive a first reading. Next update is 17.02, conflict between policies and administrative regulations. This is one where we're still out. We have to go back to Miller-Johnson because of their recommendation that in the event of a conflict between board-approved policies and administrative regulations, board-approved policy will prevail, but there was some question around how does contracts play into that. And so once we get some information back from Miller-Johnson about what that language says, that can be communicated out probably through email to get any discussion about it. And if there is no discussion or needed, it would be our recommendation that it would be lifted up as an action item for approval. Okay. Next up is policy 17.04, which is the selection of media center library materials. It is going to be our recommendation that we accept the Miller-Johnson recommendation, and it reads as such. The board intends that students be provided access to a wide variety of education materials in various media to support learning. The superintendent, and this is where the change in the original board policy via recommendation by Miller-Johnson comes in. The superintendent may make or approve purchases for the media center and/or classroom libraries, professional staff members, parents, and students. Recommendation from Miller-Johnson may recommend such purchases as well. So once again, it'll be our recommendation that we accept this recommendation from Miller-Johnson. Next one, 17.05. 17.05, which is regarding parental objections. We're asking that our recommendation is our policy remain as the current board policy states, which is the superintendent will develop regulations that provide an opportunity for parents for the presentation and fair consideration of parental objections to the school district curriculum, the selection of textbooks and other instructional materials and media center materials. Again, that is the policy that is currently in our policy, and we're recommending that it be left as is and not accept the Miller-Johnson recommendation. The last three, just to expedite, the last three, we're recommending that we adopt their revision. It is 17.06. 17.06, other matters of employment. This is the revision that Miller-Johnson is offering regarding political activities of employees. That political activities of an employee shall be conducted outside of district buildings, off district premises, and outside working hours. Here comes their revision. Political activities include but are not limited to attempting to persuade or dissuade anyone to be for or against any candidate or issue while on duty. Employees shall not use students for any political activity unless the activity is student initiated and parent approved. In accordance with Michigan law, districts are in no way to be used in the furtherance of any political activities. Again, we are proposing that we adopt that revision. Next one is 17.07. Again, under the other matters of employment, this is a new policy that Miller-Johnson is recommending, and this is, the cancellation, of a policy, and that is State School Aid Act was amended to remove this policy requirement in keeping with our philosophy relative to policy. Because it is no longer required by law, we are recommending that it be removed from this section, and we are agreeing with that recommendation. So we're looking for this policy to be lifted out of our policy, and that is all district employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. This policy does not apply to employees, board members, and school officials who are parents or legal guardians of that student. And finally, 1709. We are, again, recommending, that we adopt the revision. This is regarding digital communication. The revision is as follows. Regarding personal social media authorizations, the Board of Education does not authorize the use of personal social media to speak on the school district's behalf. The superintendent may designate social media accounts as district social media, which may be used for official school district communications. The superintendent may develop and implement administrative regulations to carry out this policy. A lot of very spirited conversation was taking place over a great deal of this, but these are the recommendations that we are bringing forward to the board this evening. And again, after any discussion, if there isn't any major reservation on the behalf of the board that we'd have to go back and deliberate on, It again will be our recommendation that at our next meeting, we bring these forward for adoption. Any conversation?
Dr. Blau?
I just want to thank you and your committee for your thorough review and consideration of each of these policy recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
As a reminder, this is the second time we're bringing this to the board. The policy committee has reviewed this several times. We came back in our August meeting, I think that was our first meeting in reviewing these, decided that we would take some of them right away, and then these are the balance. So appreciate your work on this. This will come to the board as an action item in our next meeting. Seeing no further questions on that, we will move to the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes, the Finance and Facilities Committee met Monday, September 30th. President Weems was present and Trustee Smith was present, along with several school district employees, Dr. Coffin, Jennifer Kaminsky, and Kim Pinchek. So the purpose of the meeting was to discuss basically the upcoming bid package 14, which deals with the replacement of existing signs, scoreboards at the two football fields. That's the major, with video boards and video scoreboards. And then there are additional, so that would be a Farmington High School video board with sound system, Farmington High School auxiliary field, just a traditional scoreboard. North Farmington High School, a video board with sound system, and North Farmington High School auxiliary field, a scoreboard. And so we're putting in, are we replacing the scoreboards at the auxiliary fields or putting them in? Putting them in. So they don't, so the auxiliary fields don't have scoreboards, so we're putting scoreboards in there, but we're replacing the scoreboards on the main fields. And the main fields need replacement, whether it's a traditional scoreboard or a video scoreboard. And the other things in the bid pack, for some information, it came through, we didn't really talk about the lighting. We talked briefly about the lighting, that it was going to be included in the bid pack because the lighting on the main field needs to be upgraded at both of the high schools. And the auxiliary fields do not have lighting, and we're currently renting lighting, and so we want to put lighting into the auxiliary fields. No decisions are made at the committee meetings, and so I want to just reiterate that because that's some misinformation that's floating around. And as a result of the meeting, we asked the district to come back with some additional information on the video scoreboards and to go out and look at what districts actually have the video scoreboards in the surrounding communities, and bring more details of the pricing. And that's up for discussion on tonight's discussion. And so we will have a robust discussion on that. And yes, and also as a result of the committee meeting, we also asked the board to come back with the needs of the district with the use of the bond money. And the other thing that came out at the committee meeting is these projects are at the end of the bond money, and they were held back until we looked at all the projects that were slated and completed, and so there was significant savings over many of the bond projects, and so the money for this bid pack 14 is really money that's coming from savings from all of the other bond projects. So is that a correct summary of that? And so we'll have a discussion about that during the discussion items.
Thank you for that. I will reserve my comments for that discussion. I agree there was a robust discussion. I've also shared information in addition to the committee meeting minutes that you have. You got a communication from me, each of you, on this matter. So I expect that we'll have a really good discussion later on today. Okay, the next and final report from board committees will come from Dr. Blau, the Community Engagement Committee.
Communication and Community Engagement Committee Excuse me. So the idea for creating an opportunity for our board members to engage in dialogue with members of the community outside of board meetings, which are not the venue for dialogue, was actually my idea when I was campaigning. And I chaired it the first year, and then Donald chaired it the last couple of years, and I'm chairing it again now. We had a meeting last week. The topic was noticing and belonging, and Dr. Coffin gave a wonderful overview of noticing and belonging, which is our central theme district-wide this school year. Dr. Coffin, thank you for taking the time to do that and for putting together portions of the slide presentation that you, and the video that you had created for opening day for the FPS staff and faculty. It highlighted all of the things we are currently doing to ensure that our students and their parents feel a sense of being noticed and a sense of belonging in our community. And our questions to those who were in attendance at the dialogue included, in what ways do you and or your student feel a sense of noticing and belonging, and in what ways are we missing the mark? As President Weems described, the families who were in attendance were all people who had come to our district from, in one case, outside of our country, and in the other cases, outside of our community. They were of a variety of backgrounds and cultures and races and heritages, and they all had positive experiences to share, which was really wonderful to hear. That doesn't mean that we don't have places and ways in which we still have work to do, but the work that you, Dr. Coffin, and your team of administrators and teachers have been doing over these past 3 to 5 years to bring us to this point is really making a difference in the lived experiences of our students and their families. So I thank you and all of our teachers, administrators, and staff members for your continuing diligence and attention to the noticing and belonging aspects of what we do with and for our students. We will be meeting, our committee will be meeting this Thursday at 3:30 virtually to debrief and set our course for our next community dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Heinrich.
Are we sending a survey out to the community for suggested topics? Because that was one of the things that we asked about. Has that been done?
Not to my knowledge. We'll talk about that at our meeting this
At our
week.
meeting, okay.
Thank you. We will now move to discussion items. Dr. Coffin?
Yes, so first we have Ms. Jennifer Kaminsky coming up to talk about the the resolution authorizing the 2025 refunding bonds.
I don't think I have anything for that, so let me just, and I'll invite up we have Ron Liscombe, who's here from Miller Canfield, they're our bond counsel, and then Brody Killian, who's here from PFM Financial Advisors, they are our financial advisor, so I'll invite you up if you'd also like to provide some comments. But just, let me get back to, I don't know where the main screen is. Oh, whatever. Just the Farmington. I don't think the resolution's
Just
here.
the Farmington.
Yeah, it's not here. That's okay. All right, so we're bringing this resolution authorizing 2025 refunding bonds at this time because our 2015 bonds are callable in May of 2025. And so based on the current market conditions, and our financial advisor kind of keeps a watch on that and informs us when it might be a good time for us to go out for a refunding if it could result in savings for the district and ultimately the taxpayers. So the current estimate is that we could save approximately $4 million, maybe more than that, based on current interest rates. So we are prepared to proceed with a negotiated sale. That's included in the resolution. And we will be using Stifel Nicholas, as we have in the past, as our main underwriter, along with Huntington Bank as a co-underwriter. PFM will be our financial advisor. And again, Miller Canfield has been our bond counsel on all of our bond sales. So we will be asking you to approve this resolution on 10/22. So with the savings, there's the opportunity that our debt millage could decrease in the future. Again, that depends on taxable values. The debt millage, similar to our homestead operating millage, is an annual calculation, and that's determined based on the principal and interest that we need to pay in that following year. So we set the debt millage accordingly. And I'll turn it over to Ron or Brody if they want to provide any additional info.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. My name is Ron Liscombe. I'm a partner at Miller Canfield, here on behalf of one of my other partners who couldn't be here tonight. Also proud to say my daughter is a fifth grade student at Forest, so we live in the district. So the resolution you have in front of you authorizes refunding bonds to be issued in an amount not to exceed $45,500,000. The parameters that you're establishing is a max interest rate of 4.5%, and you are requiring savings of the refunding bonds of 3%. So we're not doing this without actually realizing savings for the taxpayers. As Jennifer indicated, you are appointing underwriters for negotiated sale. You are establishing the maximum compensation for those underwriters at 0.75% of the par amount of the bonds. And you are again refunding, I think, a portion of the 2015 school building and site and refunding bonds. You are authorizing and delegating the authority to consummate the sale of the bonds to the superintendent and to Jennifer without any further action of the board. So that will all take place. It will be a sale order, a bond purchase agreement with the underwriter on the sale date, and then you'll be able to consummate the sale on the issue date. Happy to answer any questions on the legal side, and Brody is here from PFM to answer any financial questions.
So in summary and in layman's terms, we are refinancing essentially because the bonds are callable, and due to the changes in interest rates, the district could save about $4 to $4.5 million by refinancing these bonds. It is expected, not guaranteed, that this will result in tax savings to taxpayers because of the debt millage. Is that correct? And hopefully, that was a great presentation. I think maybe some terms may be lost to viewers. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. Are there any questions from board members? Okay, this matter will come to us as an action item in the next meeting on October 22nd. Mrs. Heinrich?
So you said that there's certain parameters, so if for some reason the economy changes quickly, then we'll only go through if the conditions exist that we're agreeing to, and if we don't recognize the savings, then we'll just continue on as we are. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're happy to move on to the next item.
Yes, so Ms. Kavinsky will stay up there at the podium and be joined by Mr. Scott Smith and Ms. Allison Robinson to present on the FPS scoreboard quotes and renderings.
Where did this thing go? There it is. Okay. It's like so hard to see. Okay, good evening. Not a good thing. So as Mrs. Heinrich mentioned, we did meet with the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting on September 30th to present some information that we would be bringing this evening on the high school scoreboards and lighting projects at the high schools. So also with me to help present is Allison Robinson, our Director of Athletics and Safety, and then Scott Smith from Plant Moran Real Point, who works with us on a lot of our bond projects. So just to provide information. So Scott was here on September 10th, and he provided you with a 2020 quarterly bond update, talking about the projects that were currently going on, those that took place during the summer, and then highlighted a few upcoming bond projects that are slated to be worked on. So one of those being bid package 14, and that's the high school scoreboards, as well as the stadium lighting improvements. So just to highlight some of that information, so it would be replacing the existing scoreboards on both football fields at each high school with new video boards, as well as a sound system that goes with that. Traditional scoreboards would be added to those auxiliary turf fields. We'd add lighting on the auxiliary field. Currently, neither of those fields at either of the high schools has lighting. So obviously, when it gets dark out, those fields cannot be used unless you rent lighting. And so the intent would be to install lights on those fields. And then we would be replacing, essentially upgrading the existing stadium lighting, replacing poles, and bringing those up to the LED lighting standard. So this is slated to be brought to bid sometime in November, December, with summer of 2025 targeted for the work. So again, as I mentioned, that slide was from September of 2024 with the bond update that was provided. We were also provided with an update in May of 2024 as well as January 2024. So we've been talking about this project at a higher level and kind of working on all of the information behind the scenes. So the main stadium and the auxiliary scoreboards were part of the original bond scope. They were basic scoreboards, so we had about $80,000 included for each of the high schools for replacement. So as we started to work on the site work at both Farmington High School and North Farmington, as we did walkthroughs and identified various projects as well as maybe additional needs, we decided to postpone the athletic scoreboards until the end of the bond. And that was to, maybe do a larger athletic package towards the end of the bond. So we did start to review video scoreboards based on, again, what other districts were putting in surrounding areas near to us, and then we talked about lighting on the main and the auxiliary fields as part of that project. And I know the lighting's been talked about for many, many years, just how helpful it would be to have lights on that additional turf field so that more groups can take advantage of using the fields in the evening. So the video scoreboards, that total estimate for that piece of the project, so that would include the scoreboard, the electrical, the foundation, the installation, the sound system. It also includes 2 play clocks, so one would be fixed to the board, the other would be a portable to put down at the other end of the field. So it is a long-term investment. These are significant dollars. We have not put scoreboards in place in quite a number of years. So again, just looking at trying to determine what makes sense right now and what other districts are doing. If we put in just a traditional scoreboard, we're always going to keep that for a number of years as well. So we want to make sure we're choosing the right product right now. So, as I mentioned, it has a sound system that's also included in the cost, 2 play clocks. It has recording and replayability. Again, as we mentioned, some surrounding districts have been upgraded to video boards, and I believe the board was provided with those districts. We will receive a rebate from purchasing these boards through a consortium with BSN. And that rebate will allow us to use or purchase other items for the athletic program that I know are in need as well. And then obviously we have other possible uses for these video boards besides just athletics.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about some of the other possible uses for the scoreboards. So one of the things we were really excited about when we were meeting with Daktronics and BSN, who we've been working with, is the ability to, you know, if we have these video scoreboards, to have some training opportunities for our students. We went and visited Novi High School, myself and the athletic coordinators, and we took Sean McGuckin with us too from TV10. Last spring, and they gave us a tour of their video scoreboard and the different ways that they utilize it for not just sports, but marching band, you know, other clubs and groups, senior nights, those types of things. And one of the things that they talked about is that they used their students to help run the boards. And actually, there is a curriculum that comes along with these video scoreboards. It's called Crew Connect, and it is a curriculum that can be made into an after-school club, into a class. And you know, Daktronics themselves has pushed a lot of this information out to colleges. So some of their students that have, you know, been working with the scoreboard have gotten money toward college because, you know, for 4 years of working with scoreboards, you know, and learning how to program different types of things, that's a huge skill set that some of our students could walk away with. So we're excited about that piece as well. We also could use it for things like graduation. I know right now we hold it at the ice arena, but having a video scoreboard where we could see faces and see up close may enable us to, you know, use that even as a backup facility. There's smaller schools in the area, charter schools that may, you know, want to rent the facility because now it's a little bit more, it would be a little more premier spot to rent. School and community movie nights, that's something we've seen. Some of the other districts we talked to have done those types of things, you know, just having families out, showing a nice PG movie on a summer night, and having a video scoreboard and having lights would enable it to make it a safe environment and also, you know, fun for kids. And then, of course, you know, I thought about it with my ex-principal hat too, and this idea of having, you know, middle school incentive days, you know, go over there and watch a movie, or elementary parties, you know, those types of things. So there's ways we could, you know, show our elementary and our middle school kids, you know, what our fields look like as well, and help keep our students in our district is part of that. Hosting large-scale events, so festivals, having speakers that can come out and run it. There are other possible rental incomes as well. Right now, we do have some sports programs that rent our fields, but having a video scoreboard, we can charge a little extra for that and provide someone to work the scoreboards. There's some additional revenue there as of now that, you know, that having the traditional scoreboard, they can work that themselves. And then advertising revenue can come out of that as well. We can place ads, we can sell ads on the scoreboard during the game, so that we're, you know, involving some of our community partners and showcasing them in different ways as well. So a lot of possibilities for our community and also beyond our community to use this as for some revenue, but also just as a great community resource.
Okay, so as I mentioned, there's two different kind of lighting projects at each of the high schools. One would be that main field lighting, so the current football fields. If we install new lights on the auxiliary fields, then you're going to definitely want to upgrade the main football lights. They will have, you know, a different, I guess, brightness to them. So we would upgrade those to LED. And as we've been talking with the athletic coordinators, there are some areas in the stadium that are dark. And so I know over at North, Stacy Punzel has to rent an additional light to kind of cover certain areas. So this would help kind of get rid of those dark spots within the stadium. And then also provide brighter lighting to view, you know, the various contests as well as all of the surrounding areas. So the auxiliary field lighting, a little more cost because we actually have to get electrical to those fields. There are not lights currently installed on those fields. So this would be an added benefit. And as I mentioned, this has been talked about many times over the last 5 to 10 years. Various groups would benefit from this. So as I mentioned, when it gets dark out, that field cannot be used. A lot of teams, as well as the marching band, compete for the fields using areas that have lights on them. So this would definitely benefit marching band, football, soccer, girls and boys lacrosse, field hockey, baseball and softball. If track were holding a meet, another team could be using the auxiliary field and instead of not being able to use a field at all. So we did have a few additional sports that were added in the current year. And we have needed to rent lights in the past, and that's been about $1,600 a month.
And then the benefits for the aux field lighting, actually, they really are huge. And as I've kind of moved into this position more and worked more with seeing how we schedule events and how we schedule practices, there is a definite need to have lighting on the aux field, is my opinion. There are some side benefits as well. There's potential for more rental income from the auxiliary fields. Right now, we do rent it out. Last year, we had a pretty high-profile soccer club that rented out our fields because, again, it's attractive because we have 2 turf fields, and that's not something that's very common. So having the 2 turf fields is really nice. We were able to, bring in some premier groups, and having the ability to use them later into the night will only, help with that revenue and that income. So we have soccer clubs, youth and semi-professional that ask to rent. Semi-pro football teams have approached. Definitely camps for, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, and we clinics as well. And the lighting that we are hoping to go with is a standard height for competition. So it's a little bit higher than normal height so that we could bring in some more people in terms, especially for lacrosse, they have to have a certain height of stadium lighting so that it's a regulation match. And we did, I know Jennifer alluded to this too, but we did just add field hockey as a girls' sport. That'll be an MHSAA sport next fall. So at that point, then we'll have, 2 football teams. We will have, 2 soccer teams, marching band, and now girls field hockey vying for 2 fields. They make it work. There's a little grumbling here and there when somebody's got to push somebody else off, or if there's, a game on the main field, then we got 3 teams that have to use the aux field and figure out practices. And, they make it work. But certainly, it would be a lot nicer if when we have a competition, there can be another regulation match going on at the same time. We don't have to be shifting schedules all the time because we just have the one field that can be used at night. So it would be a benefit for our parents, our teams, scheduling our matches as well. So, because right now, especially, like our marching band, they oftentimes bring in lights too, is my understanding. And so, we want to make this is not just for sports. I mean, it is largely for sports, but we want to make sure that, our students that perform in a variety of contexts have access to this. So we really feel like the lighting would be a huge benefit for our students and then beyond that. And in some other ways as well, right? One of the things that we talk about with our middle school coaches is how cool it is for our middle school kids to get to practice or have a game on the high school field. We've really been trying to work on that a little more. So having a night game, right, between Power and East football on an aux field would be just a really great thing for our community. And again, for our kids to feel what it feels like on Friday Night Lights, right? What it feels like at Farmington High or North Farmington High School. So another way to bring our middle school kids into our high school world too, and make sure that they understand what that looks like and that they want to stay here and be a part of it.
Okay, so before I move on to the summary, I did want to let the board know as well that we do have this bid package 14 budgeted in the bond at the current point, or at this current time. we will have additional money left at the end of the bond as well. So right now, we believe it's at least $1.7 million. That will be higher as we earn more interest. And so we do know that there will be money for additional projects. We are prioritizing, obviously, safety needs. We're looking at focusing on STEM and STEM-related activities, exploring opportunities for, space for the hackbots, and just, kind of gathering input. I did meet with Dr. Coffin and the principals at the various nuts and bolts meetings last week to find out what are some other priorities that they have now that we're nearing the end of the bond. And so I did capture all of those ideas. We'll continue to do that with various stakeholders within the organization and kind of look at prioritizing those needs as we finalize our spending. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you done with your presentation?
Let me just, if you want, I can just run through this. This is the last slide. And just give you the summary, and then we can take some questions. So we are going to request board approval at the October 22nd, 2024 meeting as part of bid package 14. So again, this is just for the video scoreboard piece. As I mentioned, we're purchasing these off of a consortium. So the video scoreboards as well as the other scoreboards have already been bid out on a larger scale. So we're taking advantage of that consortium. And then we'll request approval for the video scoreboards as well as those traditional scoreboards for the auxiliary fields. We would like to ask for conditional approval for the alternates that we are going to bid out as part of Bid Pack 14. And so these would be the baseball, the softball scoreboards at both Farmington High and North Farmington, as well as middle school scoreboards. And we do have renderings of all of the scoreboards that I'd like to share just right after I close this out. And so we'll be going out to bid for that remaining work, for the lighting, for the electrical, the poles, the installation, and anything else associated with that project sometime in November, with bringing it to the board for approval, assuming this is approved at the next board meeting. In December, we'll bring those bid results to you. So just to provide what those look like, just some renderings that have been put together for us. This would be the video scoreboard at Farmington High School. This would be North Farmington's video scoreboard. And then these are the traditional boards that would be on the auxiliary fields. So Farmington and North Farmington. And then, as I mentioned, there are alternates. And so this would be the baseball and softball scoreboard at Farmington High School, North Farmington. And then for each of the middle schools, it has their name with their, not symbol, logo, mascot. With their mascot, sorry. I couldn't come up with the word. So that was East, Power Middle School, and then Warner Middle School. So again, those are alternates. And what I mean by that is when we go out to bid for bid package 14, we're going to bid out the video scoreboards as well as the aux scoreboards, as well as the lighting. And then we'll ask companies to also bid on installing middle school scoreboards as well as baseball and softball. And then we will evaluate that as part of the entire bid project if we can afford to move forward with those alternates. So asking for a conditional approval right now would just mean if we decided as part of bid package 14 to accept those alternates, we could go ahead and order these scoreboards. And I can take any questions.
I just was wondering, if you're moving the boards different places and what have you, Is there insurance that's embedded into that?
So these would all be brand-new boards. Is that the question? So we'll be taking down the existing scoreboards and having new boards installed. Is
I
that?
was just thinking, if they're going here and then they're going to various places and they're moving a lot, would there be insurance?
Oh, yes. As they're being transported after they're completed, before they come here? Is that where you're at? Yes. There is insurance that will cover that. Mhm.
We'll go to Mr. Turner, then Mrs. Smith, Dr. Turner, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Walker, and Dr. Blau. I'm sorry, and then Mrs. Heinrich. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Everyone has
Everyone's got
questions.
questions, yeah.
And hopefully, some of these questions will be redundant. You only get to ask them once or twice. But in terms of operational impact analysis or considerations for these boards, and I think that's probably where Ms. Fox was going in terms of the purchase, have we thought about the considerations for the ongoing future expenses for running these boards, being that they don't currently have electricity and lights to the extent that they will? Have we thought about the budgetary impacts of what that may look like? And then additionally, the boards themselves, do they have warranty on it? Are they going to be insured in case there's a loss of them from condition of God or the like? In terms of protecting this great investment, because obviously it's a significant spend, so protecting them would be of concern for me. And then, do we have the internal expertise at the district level to provide for the ongoing maintenance that may be required for these boards if the lights go out or if there's anything electronic that fails? What is the upkeep estimates for there? You may not have those questions today. Those are things that are on my mind as we move forward.
Well, I will say, yes, these boards would definitely be insured by the district's liability policy. So it would be covered if something happened, say, from the weather or whatever it may be. As far as warranty, we have a 2-year parts as well as labor warranty on the boards. And then there's a 5-year, Scott, could you explain what that 5 years for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. Yes, one of the major considerations we thought about is what is the warranty, particularly on the video aspect. That's where we would anticipate problems if there was. So part of our ongoing conversation was let's increase that over what they normally would say standard 2-year. So included with that is a 5-year part and labor warranty on the video piece. And as Jennifer mentioned, everything else would be that 2-year, which is a little bit more traditional. But we want some more additional insurance on that. That's something we can do as part of the initial purchase, whereas warranties generally, aren't bondable later in life. But initially, we can do that, and we've kind of extended that to a 5-year plan to provide some additional protection for the first 5 years.
Mrs. Smith?
I'd like to thank all of you and Dr. Coffin, as well as the Finance Committee, for putting that meeting together so that we could be in the loop of what's going on. I appreciate being in the know, letting us know what was being done and how it was been done, and that this has been going ongoing without us knowing what was going on. So thank you to the Finance Committee, to Dr. Coffin, and to you, Mrs. Kaminsky, and you too, Ms. Robinson, and everybody else that's been involved in this. There are a lot of pros in this. It does bring curb appeal. It does help us bring revenue in with people maybe wanting to use our fields. But prioritizing, we do have and I appreciate the conversation that we are going to take care of the hack box, because Mr. Francis, if he was to see this, I'm pretty sure he'd be, well, hey, I've been coming here wanting a hack box. So we are going to take care of them. But my main concern is we have track fields that we can't even have people, visiting teams, come in and use. We also have parents that have students that are on track and field that we don't have tents for them. So when it rains or whatever, and we're a premier district. And so those are priorities as well. I appreciate that we're talking about graduation and maybe movie nights or whatever. I also would like to know, when we put these in, how long is this going to take? Because this is Michigan. So, we got to worry about, as you see in other states, there's hurricanes and everything going on. Are we looking at putting these in before bad storms or what have you? But like I said, at the end of the day, we do have some pros about this, but there are some things that we do need to look at too that are just as important as these here. So my concern is our tracks, our tennis courts. We have people that play tennis, and these, tennis courts are not looking the best. So thank you.
And I will let you know, those are on our list of items to address towards the end of the bond as well. So we are aware of the tennis courts. As far as just talking to the tents, that's obviously more of a supply, not something we would purchase with bond dollars. So I will be meeting with Allison to talk through supply purchases for the upcoming year as well as uniforms. So we are going to start putting together kind of that long-term planning, whether it's for athletic uniforms, bigger supplies that may need to be purchased for athletics, maintenance vehicles, just looking at a wide range of items. So just wanted to let you know that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
I have a few. First of all, thank you so much for this information. Quick question regarding the rental of the lights that's been going on. How often per year could you say that we do the rental at $1,600 a month?
Well, I know marching band rented them for 1 month, and that may have been in the last few years, and it was $1,600 for them. Stacy has mentioned having to rent a light just to illuminate some of the dark area at the North Farmington field. I'm not sure exactly how much that is that she's incurred, but for marching band, I know for the month it was about $1,600.
Just wasn't aware, obviously, until this information came forward about that particular expense. You mentioned the possibility with these new scoreboards, graduations possibly, you mentioned as a backup. I was curious, and this is a question that hopefully could be answered prior to our next meeting, how much we spend on the hockey arena versus if we were to use our fields as a primary place for graduation in lieu of these boards. Is there a cost savings? What are the logistics involved in that at a high level? At least at this point, I would be very interested in that information. The next one up is, has there been any thought around, once the lights and boards for the auxiliary fields specifically are put into place, what additional costs, this is piggybacking off of Dr. Turner, what additional costs might be involved with the increase in use of those very nice fields, turf fields getting tore up on a regular basis between semi-pro soccer, semi-pro football, and that kind of thing. I'd be curious as to know what that budgeting plan would look like. And with that as well, going through this entire bond process has been an education for me specifically in terms of the general position of where our district is from a facility point of view. And this is an observation, but it also piggybacks off of something Mrs. Smith mentioned some time ago regarding the trucks. And obviously not for now, but I would be very interested in, once we kind of conclude our bonds, what does that overall plan look like for the maintenance and upkeep of all these wonderful things that we are purchasing, so we don't find ourselves in a position where we're having to, buy a fleet of trucks or having to replace 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 different scoreboards all at one time. I'd be thankful to the public and everyone else that we have the bond dollars to do all of that, but so what are we going to do to make sure that we don't have to make this kind of purchase in the future? And then lastly, and this is, I'm just thinking, a concern, and I'm a video guy, so this is where this is coming from. Somebody wanting to be devilish and deciding to throw something at the video monitors. what level of protection is, the density of the plastic or whatever the material is for the monitor? What's the kind of turnaround should those be damaged? Because to the point of curb appeal, the flip side of that is one of the monitors being out and we're not getting those things repaired, hopefully quickly enough in time for them to be used again. So those were my questions in general, most of which I can wait on answers to, but I look forward to those answers.
Yep, we can definitely get you those.
Thank you. Dr. Blau?
Yes, I share my colleague, Ms. Smith's concern around the expenditure of these significant dollars on scoreboards when our STEM facility and our commitment monetarily to a STEM facility for our hackbots, we keep talking about that we're going to support that, but we don't have anything concrete still. And the reality is, it's not that athletics is not important, but a far greater percentage of our students who are involved with the hackbots go on to successful careers in those STEM-related fields. I think it's like 90%. So we have a high percentage of students who participate in our robotics and other STEM-related activities. We have a lot of students who are interested in participating at the elementary and middle school level, but we currently don't have the facility to support that. And so I have concern around saying yes to this, these $2.7 million for the scoreboards when we still haven't done anything significant for the hackbots and a district STEM facility. So those are my concerns around this.
So, and thank you for those comments. So I just want to make sure everybody knows what we can and cannot use bond dollars for.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot purchase a facility with these bond dollars. So when we go out for that bond approval, we have ballot language that says how we can spend our money. We cannot use it for new facilities. We cannot erect a new facility using bond dollars. So could we add on somewhere? Yes, that would be very, very costly, I believe. And I can let Scott talk to that a little bit more as to what that might entail and how much that would cost. But as I mentioned, we are considering, spots, areas for hackbots. So please know that we are looking at that. It's just we cannot use bond dollars to, say, purchase some sort of site.
So I understand that. Thank you for clarifying that. Mm-hmm. If we were to, though, find an area in an existing building in the district, we could then use bond dollars to renovate that area so that...
Yes, we could. As far as I know right now, there aren't any spots that meet the criteria, because I know we've combed through our buildings. We're looking at ceiling height, making sure it's the right space, and that, eventually that program can grow even more. And so I will say, and I don't know if Dr. Coffin wants to add any more, but we are trying to problem solve that. But it'll take a little bit of time at this point. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, I feel like some of the things I have to say, I will apologize in advance for being blunt. But basically, thank you for the list of video scoreboard. So we've got 29 districts in Oakland County. On this list of 21 schools that currently have video scoreboards, only 4 of them are in Oakland County, which is only 14%. The schools considering, out of the 2, 4, 6 schools considering, Farmington is the only one in Oakland County. So I'm looking at $1 million, and out of that, so basically you said a basic scoreboard was $80,000 for a nice basic scoreboard. Non-video scoreboard to upgrade would be $80,000 as opposed to $380,000. And so, double that for each of the high schools, so that's $600,000, and then you're talking about all the electrical and everything at that. So basically, yes, athletics is important, but, video scoreboards sometimes are bells and whistles, and we want to be a leading district, but I don't want to be leading in bells and whistles. I really want to lead in our core focus, which is academics. With that said, I think athletics is important, and it really has a place because it really contributes to the overall. We can provide athletic opportunities. We can look at upgrading. I'm in favor of upgrading the lighting. I remember my daughter was in high school, when the lighting was installed in the schools. And so I know how that is because I know how many years she's been out of high school. And I assume those are traditional lights, and those are more expensive to operate than the LED lightings. And I'm just like looking up at the ceiling lights, and this was renovated, and I'm like, how come we don't have LED lights in here? So that's not a question to be answered right now. So that's the way to go. The auxiliary fields, I don't have a problem with. How we could better use our money rather than having the alternate bid packs, that could be part of the bid packs to make sure that those are guaranteed. Upgrading the turf on the auxiliary fields, maybe looking at putting tracks onto the auxiliary fields because there might be needs for that. Upgrading our middle school athletic fields, there might be needs for that. So I'm just looking at $600,000, and if this was the end and the very last end of the bid pack of all of our bond proposals, and we did everything in the school district that we had, to do, and we didn't have any more projects, and we had an extra $1 million left over, and said, hey, we can afford video boards, but I think the video boards should be last on the list, and I would like to have an option to consider purchasing standard and upgrading the scoreboards to standard scoreboards and making these alternates part of the, not alternate, but part of the important things. Because I really think that scoreboards for those auxiliary sports are important also. And the field facilities, and we're talking about, having supplemental practice fields, and do our baseball and softball, do they need additional practice fields, and do they need upgrades as far as their turf and things like that? So those are things that is the district looking at, and, and where are we in terms of those types of facilities? And what else did I want to ask about? The rental lights, because you talked about putting in, electricity. So when we do rent the lights, are they run off on generators because we don't have electricity out there? And so so they're generator lights. Okay, and it seems to me, since I've been on the board, we have upgraded the sound systems in the stadiums because that was part of a bond or a bid pack. So I'd like to know when our sound systems were upgraded.
Go ahead, Mr. Walker.
I believe it was the PA systems that we had
Not
addressed,
sound
not the sound systems.
PA is not sound?
It is sound, but it's a different system within the field stadium. Correct me if I'm wrong. The PA system that we had those addressed off cabling connections. I want to say this was about 1.5 years ago or something.
On the
to that
fields.
effect, on the fields.
Yes.
Okay, so
This would be, completely different sound
that's what I thought,
system.
yeah.
So what kind of sound are we talking about then? I mean, I when I watch football games, you have the announcers announcing.
Right,
And so-
announcers would be, right. Broadcast. Yeah.
So what kind of sound system are we talking about then, if we're not talking about the PA system? How is that different than what we upgraded?
I mean, I'm assuming it would be the announcers, and then the plays that are taking place on the TV, you're going to have sound feeds into that. I don't know. I'd have to find that out, Claudia. I don't know the complete details.
If I may, I reserve the right to be wrong, but if I remember the package correctly, it was a part of, I don't want to get the term wrong, but like a fiber optic system that was set up to convey convey sounds back and forth between various points within the district. It would also tie itself back to broadcasting, I want to say with TV 10 and things of that nature. So we're talking about sound coming out from the stadium to the general population, as opposed to the sound within the stadium for the participants, and the families within the stadium. That's the difference in the sound.
Yeah, Mr. McGuckin just chimed in. He said that it would be an upgrade to the speakers, not the hardware. All of the equipment in the press box will remain the same. The sound now comes from the scoreboard.
Okay, so it comes from the scoreboard. So we would need additional speakers with the video boards, whereas if we had a traditional scoreboard, we would keep the same speakers.
It's part of the scoreboard.
Upgrade them.
It comes with the scoreboard.
Oh, okay. So we could upgrade this. So when we're putting scoreboards into the auxiliary fields, then are we putting sound into the auxiliary fields to go with the scoreboards?
That's not currently part of this proposal. So if you guys want to look at this rendering, up above the scoreboard, while it looks like a mascot, this is actually a mesh screen that goes over a large center speaker. This provides all of the sound for the whole system. And some of the sound that you're referring to, Claudia, was put in a while back, but it's more mounted to the press boxes. And some of the feedback we've gotten is it's not meeting all the requirements, I guess, or the expectations. So this is a large, robust speaker, and it does do all the intra-game. Your announcements go over it. You can play music, but it would replace that. But the hardware that all that stuff plugs into, we're able to reuse a lot of that. And as Sean mentioned, we all met on site to see what we could repurpose from the existing purchase. So this is more of a speaker thing than it is like the hardware.
So my question is, if we didn't go with the video board, could we upgrade the scoreboards and the speaker system for less than $1 million? And could we use some of that money, since we're putting scoreboards into the auxiliary fields and we want to be able to use those for games, then you would have to have a PA system in the auxiliary fields. And so could we use some of that money instead of the video to put a PA system over in those auxiliary fields so that they could be more equitable as far as the teams and the activities that are being used for, that you're promoting, that we're going to use them for? Because you're saying we're putting scoreboards in, we're putting lighting in, so we want to use them for matches, but then do they have a sound system, or do we need that? So could we use some of the money for that? So I'm just looking at, what's the best use of our $1 million? Get the most coverage for that, rather than the big bells and I guess I shouldn't say that, because I feel like I'm being disrespectful saying that, and that's not my intent. But I just look at it as something it's a really big project, and could we do quality, smaller projects and better use our money?
If I might summarize kind of what I've heard from the board and maybe give the district some direction. I think I've heard that there's generally some support for upgrading. I think folks can see the benefit to students, to the community, of having an updated system. I attend games. I recognize that there's often light bulbs that we need to replace, that the system is old. I think a valid point with respect to at least the high schools is the dollar amount for the video screens. So I think it would be helpful to understand whether there's an alternative to video. Do we really need the video? Is there an alternative to video that addresses sound and so forth and so on? And is that difference really $600,000, or is it something different? I think that a lot of folks brought up that there is value beyond just the dollars, and for me, there was certainly value around safety. I like the fact that we're improving lighting. That's definitely a good thing. I love the fact that we're turning fields that are currently not useful to us into something that is productive and can be an asset to us. I appreciate that certainly very soon, after 5 o'clock, we're not able to use those fields at all. for a good, 5 months out of the year because they're dark. I recognize that our marching band is using the parking lot, which is not a great use of space, to currently practice because those fields are dark. So I get some of that. I think what might make us feel a little bit more comfortable with this size of an investment is help us understand how this investment works. I heard some folks talk about the fact that we might be able to use this for graduation. Help us understand what the annual savings might be there. Help us understand, I've calculated and come up with about $700,000 myself if I take the money that we're currently spending for lighting, that we would no longer have to spend, we no longer have to rent lighting. We might be able to generate some revenue with advertising. I can also see us generating some income from rentals, from renting either our football fields or the auxiliary spaces. If there was some way to help us understand that over a 10-year period of time, what we're recovering, I think that might make some sense. That gets us a little bit more comfortable on the amount, the size of this investment. What I'm also hearing from our board is some questions around prioritization. I'm hearing that folks, and I've had this question for years, what makes its way to the board, and what are the other needs that are across the district that maybe don't bubble up to us? I know we all see, especially those of us who are attending games or in schools, that there are other areas of need. And I think that it might make us feel more comfortable to get sort of an inventory of those things and a plan. To the extent that we could see, and we recognize that some of those things on that list don't qualify for bond dollars. But if we could understand what does and where those are in future plans, I think that might make folks feel a bit more comfortable. So I'm going to ask the district to help us understand how we recover some of this investment with reductions in fees that we're currently incurring and income. And I'm also going to ask if we could see, especially the specific things that were listed today. I know we have a plan for Hackbox, but I think we want to see it, or some of the alternatives that we're currently considering, and what the other needs are in athletics and how we plan to address those. I think that might be helpful for members of our board. I see a couple of shakes of heads. So is there anything that I'm missing, board members? Yes, Mr. Walker.
I just want to say, and I think I can speak on behalf of my colleagues here, that when comments about we want to lead with academics, or I know athletics are important and that kind of thing, I want to make sure that our community, our public, and our students especially understand that we do understand the importance of athletics and that it goes far beyond just playing. That athletics for many students is the anchor point for them to remain in school. It is the motivator for them to position themselves for better things along the way. And by no means in this discussion are we diminishing the importance, the relevance, the joy that children get from participating in athletics, specifically in this case football or track along the way. And I just want to make sure that is fully communicated and people fully understand that this is not an indictment on athletics in any way, shape, or form. I just want to make sure that that's lifted up.
Thank you for that. And then I just had one. Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Hunt.
No, because I'm the one that came up with that. And my daughter's played college athletics. And so, and I'm a teacher. And it's like, student athlete. And so, we just want to keep that balance of student athletes and students and athletics. Well, but absolutely. So absolutely. I mean, athletics are well-rounded as far as and we really want to support our facilities. It's just what is the best use of our money? And another thing that when we approved the renovations over to turn the old central office into a warehouse, there was talk about storage spaces in the buildings would be opening up. We're taking things that are in storage, and so I want to make sure that we have money needed if we need some renovations within our buildings to better utilize some of the space that is opened up by moving all the things that we stored in our buildings over to the central warehouse. that we're supporting. And so all of these things, everything is intertwined. This is not a, one piece here, one piece here. And I think one thing that President Weems is alluding to is we get these individual things and we're asking more to see the whole picture so that we can see all the connections and all the layers of it, and so that we know how these things are fit together. And so, you're talking about, this is money that we have saved on other bid packs, which is fine, but then there are still other needs that we haven't bid out on yet. So that was the point that I'm hoping that we made.
Thank you. And when we come up with, the investment piece, I think the rebate is a very good part of that analysis. And I don't only ask if there was ever a consideration to leverage that rebate for some of the smaller scoreboards. Rather than, make the full purchase and then get a rebate, why wouldn't it maybe consider making a smaller purchase and using some of that to, what would be generated as a rebate to purchase the smaller scoreboards. So thank you, board members, for a robust discussion. I think that it's clear that, this is important and we're interested in furthering the conversation. With seeing no further questions, I think we're going to move on to our next item, which is the Chromebook purchase.
So Mr. Wes Prescott, Director of Technology for Oakland Schools, is going to come and talk about, as a discussion item, potential purchase of more Chromebooks.
Yes, good evening. So as we continue to look at our implementation of technology and how it supports instruction, we want to keep our focus on equity and access for all of our students. With that in mind, we're in need of purchasing 500 additional Chromebooks to be able to support that. It has been planned for in our bond budget, so we are following our bond plan, and it will be supported by bond funds within that budget.
Thank you. Any questions, Mrs. Heinrich?
Is this just replacing wear and tear and maintaining the level that we have?
Yeah.
Because things wear out?
Yep.
Okay.
And the timing of this purchase, this is to maintain a consistent model for all of our students. If we delay the purchase, we're going to be purchasing a different model. We'd need different parts for repair. So remaining consistent really helps us keep costs down.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, we'll move on to our next item. Thank you so much for that. The next item is the OCSBA Proposed bylaw amendment. There is a proposal to amend the bylaws for the OCSBA to allow a member of the board of directors, if they're elected or appointed to another member's school district board of education that is already represented on the board of directors, that director may complete their current term on the board of directors. Currently, that's not allowed by the board, by the bylaws. Currently, a newly elected ISD Board of Education trustee currently also serves on a board which is an eligible seat for the OCSBA Board of Directors. And so the OCSBA is concerned because their elections have repeatedly shown that not enough active members are willing to serve on the board, so they're concerned about losing this member. If the school districts do not approve this proposed exception, they will lose a director on January 1st. If this proposed exception is approved, then 2 ISD trustees will remain on the board of directors until their current terms end in June of 2026. And then at the end of their current terms, the exception will expire, and only 1 member from the ISD Board of Education will be allowed to serve. If anyone has any questions on this, please feel free to reach out. This will be an action item on our next agenda. It needs to be approved and turned into, or we need to vote on it before October 30th. Okay.
Can
Yes.
I just speak just to clarify that?
Sure.
Just a little bit. So basically, this is a unique situation. And the Oakland County School Board Association, their board appointments run in June. And whereas our school board elections and our school board terms end in December and start in January. And so the current situation right now, and we're only allowed to have, every school district is only allowed to have one representative. So right now, Carol Finkelstein is on the Board of Education of West Bloomfield School District, and she was elected to the Oakland Schools Board of Education. And so she's serving in her position as the West Bloomfield representative. She's not running for reelection, so in December, her term is going to end, and she will no longer be on the West Bloomfield Board of Education. And Carol and Mark Katz are both on the Oakland Schools Board of Education. And so there will be two from the Oakland Schools Board of Education until June. And so rather than having to replace one of them, there are, out of the Board of Directors, there's also 4 of the Board of Directors whose terms are up for reelection. And so if they don't get reelected in December, there might be more openings. And so this is just to make an exception so that the 2 board members from Oakland Schools will represent, and then only one of them will move forward, so we won't have 2. And so that's the unique situation. So rather than try and fill that position or leave it blank.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, then we will move on to our last discussion item, which is the school of choice. The next item is public comment. If anyone wants to do public comment, please leave it in the box. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. The Board of Education is required each year to approve our request to continue to participate in schools of choice. So this evening, I just wanted to take the opportunity not only to present what you'll be asked to approve, our recommendations at our next board meeting, but also an update of where we are since we just went through count day. So Farmington Public Schools, when we talk about schools of choice, the board is actually approving the Section 105, but there's also different ways that we allow choice for our residents and our staff. So the first way is through our intra-district, or you think about internal transfers, and that's just students, they must live in the Farmington Public Schools boundaries in order to access this option. Next, we have PA 227, which allows our staff members who are hired by Farmington Public Schools to bring their children to Farmington Public Schools. And then finally, the Section 105, limited schools of choice, that allows for students or families who live within the Oakland County boundaries only, for them to apply to send their children here to Farmington Public Schools. So I wanted to share a little bit of information from where we landed this year on some of our schools of choice. We talk a lot about our STEAM Center. That is a lottery school, so I wanted to include that in this update. This year we received 671 applications, and there were 96 student placements. You can see how those break down. Primarily our placement or our openings are in kindergarten, so we had 72 of those, 15 in 1st through 5th, and then only 9 in 6th through 8. 29 of the applicants that were placed were not already enrolled in FPS. So our kindergartners are not, and then there's the 29 that are not as well. The others come from within district choosing to move into our STEAM Center. We look at intra-district. We monitor how many students want to transfer between buildings. This year, we did not allow for transfer into 3 of our elementary buildings, Longacre, Forest, and and Hillside. I'm sorry, Longacre, Forest, and Hillside. Siblings only are the ones that were able to move into those buildings. So you can see we had 104 of our students and families that requested to move to other buildings other than their boundaries. Again, that is also just for Farmington residents to be able to do. We had 20 applications for PA 227, and you can see what those are. Those are our staff members. And then for our Section 105 limited schools of choice, just kind of by the numbers, we had 157 applications that were submitted. This is down from the 223 we had the year prior. A couple of things, as I mentioned, limiting the elementary buildings that were open. Those are often buildings that are highly requested. So some families, if they couldn't get in there, did not want to continue in the process. And also in the past, we had allowed for third-party affidavits, meaning if you lived in Oakland County with a family member, but it wasn't your home, we did allow that. This year, we did not do that through schools of choice. Out of those 157, we approved 140. We had 127 of our parents accept those applications, and 80 of those students, as of count day, were enrolled and completed the enrollment process here at Farmington Public Schools. So this is the first time we've been able. I have been part of going start to finish to get this data. So we've talked about this at Cabinet. I will have conversations around if we had 127 parents accept, but only 80 end up enrolling. We're really interested to see what happened there. So we had about 63% of those families who accepted actually brought their children here, but we'll continue to check on that and reach out to families to get more information. The board, what we'll be recommending is to continue with our intra-district school of choice as well as our limited Section 105. Those are the windows. Those are consistent with when we collect applications, so it starts right when we get back from winter break. And this is opened to residents in Oakland County for grades kindergarten through 9th. And we will have identified buildings closed. We are going to recommend we also remove Gill as an open school. Their enrollment is significantly higher this year, and we just due to lack of space. So when we close some others, that was one of the other choice schools. And then again, we will continue to not offer third-party affidavits. So that's in a nutshell what we're looking at for the 25-26 school year.
Mrs. Heiner?
Just as far as opening up schools to schools of choice, many of our schools are neighborhood schools, and there's, during the summer, people move in, move out, and things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you keep spaces open for people moving into the neighborhood so that they can go to their neighborhood school? And we're not maxing out our buildings, are we, so that we still have room for Farmington residents?
Correct. We do have caps. We accept up to 20 at each grade level, K through 8, and then we look at a cap of 40 for 9th grade. We did not have that many. We didn't meet that. I would say the only place where we looked at the cap was for kindergarten. So we had real close to 20 at that grade level across all of our buildings. So, but the reason why we close them is because of that. We need to have space for those who are moving in or who have siblings.
So if somebody moves into the neighborhood, like Forest is closed, but if somebody moves into Forest is in a neighborhood, if somebody moves into the neighborhood and they have 3 children and they show up at the school to enroll their children, you'll have a spot for them because they live in the neighborhood you want.
That's why we close them to intra-district as well as a county, because we need to have space for those who live in that community. And just so you know, if something is closed and they already have a sibling in there, we do allow the other siblings to go into our buildings as well.
My question is sort of the reverse. Mm-hmm. So I've heard this happens fairly often, where a person moves after the deadline, but wants their child to continue to go to their old school. They've missed the school of choice window to be able to apply. What do we do in those situations?
So if it's an intra-district deadline, that's our own self-imposed. If that falls outside of the school of choice window that you approve, so we cannot accept outside of that window. So we do encourage families, if they believe they may be moving outside of Farmington, to apply through the school of choice window. And then even if they don't need it, and so that's why you see some of those applications, some applied, but they didn't move, so they just stay as residents.
I'm sorry, I meant intra-district.
Yes, so that's our own timeline.
Okay.
So we are able to make, through admin transfers, we have a process where the two administrators speak and talk about taking those
Gotcha.
students.
Okay.
So again, that one is internal, that's just FYI for you.
Okay.
You are voting on the county only, and we
Okay.
cannot work outside of that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
So the school of choice applicants have to live in Oakland County?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, I think we are able to move to our next public comment. I'm going to take Melissa Francis, who is going on behalf of Henry, or do we have both of you together? No. Okay, so we'll have Henry Francis.
Oh, you're not first. You can follow me.
I'm sorry, what's happening? We have both of you?
Sorry, he's going to follow me because I don't want to follow him. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Dr. Coffin. Glad to see you all at the very late night. I was going to speak on behalf of Henry to advocate for a STEM center for hackbots, but he made it here. He was unable to get here on time because he was actually down in Livonia at their lovely, lovely field that they're gracious enough to share. So shortly before 5 o'clock, he left to make it there by 5:30. So roughly a 35, 40-minute drive at that time of day with a 125-pound robot. So you can imagine how happy my mom heart is, excuse me, to have him driving during rush hour to another city to do what we should be able to do in our own facility. So, listening tonight, my head was spinning. I'm sure you probably saw it take flight in the room. Talking about, and Mrs. Kaminsky mentioned prioritizing safety with the fields and the lighting, and we definitely should be doing that. But we need to protect all of our kids and prioritize safety for all of our kids. So having them driving to other cities to do, like I said, what they should be able to accomplish here, driving the robot, practicing for an upcoming competition, that needs to be considered, that not just for my kids, but we've got a whole 65-person team. Dr. Coffin, Mrs. Kaminsky saw the numbers of kids, like we're bursting at the seams. And our Cobalt survey, again, the Cobalt survey that Ms. Baumann presented a few weeks ago, our district by far, they're begging for the same thing we're begging for. They're begging for STEAM opportunities. They're actually not recommending the district, is what I heard in the survey results, because of that. That's one reason they would not recommend the district. Not a good look, not a great look. I love sports. All three of my kids have played sports in high school. I've coached teams. Not a great look to spend $2.7 million on the scoreboard when we can't spend any money on a STEM facility. And I hear that you're working on it, but I think we need to expedite a timeline. I'm not hearing what the plan is. I'm hearing we're working. It's been 10 years. But when will the work come to fruition? When will we see a facility? When will we keep our kids in the district to do their job? We're not looking at a football team that doesn't have a field to play on, but we're looking at a robotics team that doesn't have a field to play on. We're looking at bells and whistles. That's not bringing families into the district. That's not keeping families in this district. And our families in this district told you that in the survey, and I hope you are listening. I'm obviously frustrated tonight, so I should probably stop, and that timer will tell me to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Henry Francis, followed by Kelly Goldberg. And that is the last public comment card that I have.
All right. Good evening, board members. Obviously, as you heard, I was out in Livonia tonight at their STEM facility, and kind of stemming off of what my mom was saying earlier with the Cobalt survey, we've got a lot of parents and community members who want to see STEM in our community, but it's also in our staff. I had the opportunity to talk with my school's principal recently, and even she was, talking about the same sentiment of, we're behind, we need a STEM facility. It's not a good look for the district. And she suggested an idea to even add on to some of our current buildings. There is space available. For example, right outside of Farmington High School, we have a lovely pavilion area that we haven't used since before COVID, and she suggested we could add on and put a field in there, which not only saves us money, but can also fit within the bond work, I believe. I'm not an expert on this, but if I understand correctly, the bond work is for existing buildings in the district, and if we add on to a building, that still should fit in with the current bond work, and $1.7 million should certainly be enough money to create an extra part of our building dedicated to a robotics facility. And if not, very well, that is, I'm not an expert in that area, but it's the same sentiment being repeated, not only by the parents in the district, not only by the students in the district. There are staff who want the same thing. And, it's been a really long time. My sisters have been here. I've been here since 10 years ago, and I know mentors who have been on this team since 2010, and, the most we've gotten is being able to use our school's current setup, which just isn't enough. It really is not. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Goldberg?
Good evening. I support what Henry said, and I support those of you questioning the wisdom of improvements on the athletic field when we could be putting some of that into allowable bond improvements. But that's not what brought me here. What brought me here, and this was going to be my only day off this week because of my obligations with the Jewish holidays. I had noticed some months back that you no longer include written materials that you're considering that are up for discussion, such as the policies you were discussing this evening. And one board member said, I believe, that decisions aren't made in committees, and I would beg to differ with that because your committees come with recommendations to the board, and it seems a little weak to offer the public these, interactions in the community and being seen when you have stopped equipping us to be able to come to you with meaningful recommendations and the ability to prepare for meetings and make intelligent commentary on these very vital policies that are your governing documents. Specifically, and I apologize because I was in the car, so I wasn't able to, I was only listening, I wasn't able to write anything down. But you mentioned incorporating a policy, I believe, that prohibited the discussion of a specific medical procedure. There was another policy that revolved around, book policy and permissible reading materials. And I venture to say these are very important policies to parents in the district, people who no longer have kids in the district. And I would say that if you are trying to give the community a sense of being heard and being seen, you need to return to publishing your materials ahead of time, your supportive materials, because it would enable intelligent conversation, but B, it also might prevent a lot of misunderstanding, such as myself. Like, I don't have a way to go and see what those, the policy as it stands and the policy, as it's being proposed to be revised, and you're voting on it this evening. Last year, I commented on a policy, and actually, I believe the modest wording change I suggested was incorporated in your final revision. So I would just ask you to continue, and I applaud President Williams for having 2 opportunities for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you know, we are not voting on policies today. That information will be shared so that people have an opportunity to look at it and comment before voting. We will now move to, is there any more public comment? Calling once, calling twice. We're now closing public comment, and we're moving on to items from the treasurer.
Yes, I have an expenditures report. I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated October 8th, 2024 as follows. General Fund, $18,063,323. General Fund Athletics, $68,917. Capital Projects 2020 Bond Fund, $2,948,180. Nutrition Services Fund, $388,983. Benefits Stabilization Fund, $2,483,857. Total, $23,953,260.
Support.
Motion made by Mrs. Heinrich and supported by Mrs. Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next, we have the consent agenda. Mr. Walker.
I move that the Board of Education approve the October 8th, 2024 consent agenda as follows. Number 1, August 24th, 2024 revised board retreat minutes. Highlighted information is what changed, both versions made available. Number 2, September 5th, 2024 policy committee meeting minutes. September 10th, 2024 regular meeting. September 10th, 2024 facilities and finance meeting. September 12th, 2024 policy committee meeting. September 24th, 2024 regular meeting draft minutes. September 26th, 2024 policy committee meeting minutes. September 30th, 2024 facilities and finance committee meeting draft minutes.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Dr. Turner.
There's B and C on there, Head Start and Personnel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would like to redo your motion?
Part of the
Well, it's already been
consent
seconded. Will you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Would you like to do another one?
I would like to resubmit. I move that the Board of Education approve the October 8th, 2024 consent agenda as follows. Item A, approval of the minutes. August 24th, revised board retreat minutes. September 5th, policy committee meeting minutes. September 10th, regular meeting minutes. September 10th, facility finance meeting minutes. September 12th, policy committee meeting minutes. September 24th, regular meeting draft minutes. September 26th, policy committee meeting minutes. September 30th, facilities and finance committee meeting minutes, draft minutes, along with any items underneath item B for Head Start, as well as C for personnel items.
Support.
Motion made to approve the consent agenda made by Mr. Walker, supported by Dr. Turner. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Are there any reports from board representatives? Dr. Blau.
Yes, the Toast for Education is coming up on November 15th. Tickets are available now, so both message to my fellow board colleagues as well as the community. Please join us for this spectacular gala event. It's a fundraiser for our Farmington Hills Education Foundation, which helps provide scholarships for students as well as all kinds of grant opportunities for our teachers. So go online, buy a ticket, come join us.
Thank you. Any other reports? Seeing none, we will now adjourn. Thank you.